The question is that the Premier's address be noted. The Honourable Member for Elwick.
Thank you, Mr President. I rise to make a brief contribution in reply to the Premier's State of the State Address 2025. I appreciate honourable members' indulgence as I speak on this today, acknowledging some time has passed since the State of the State address was delivered. However, I was absent recovering from some unplanned surgery at the time of the delivery and replies. My contribution today will be limited to acknowledging the contribution of our community sector and volunteers and expressing my hope that the Premier and his team will give due acknowledgement to both in future State of the State addresses and in the budget to be handed down tomorrow. Because what stood out to me, Mr President, and indeed many in the community sector, in hearing the Premier's State of the State address was the intense and narrow focus on the business sector and our economy. What stood out to me was the absence of any reference to the community and volunteer sector and its important contribution to our state. In fact, the Leader of Government Business said the key message was relatively straightforward. Without a strong economy, you cannot provide the range of services and initiatives that Tasmanians rightly expect of their government. Well, Mr President, whilst this might be true, I'd argue that a strong economy on its own is not enough. I acknowledge a strong economy assists government to deliver services and assists the government to support the community sector. That is not lost on me. But I'd argue that a strong community and volunteer sector is also critical if you're able to provide the range of services and initiatives that Tasmanians rightly expect of their government. For the community sector and volunteers greatly assist the government to deliver services. Further to this, they save the government a significant amount of money through the work they do and the services they provide to support Tasmanians every day, often running on the smell of an oily rag. What I heard, Mr President, from community organisations following the Premier's State of the State address was that if they want to be noticed, they feel like they need to start wearing high-vis or suits. It feels like, Mr President, they'd better show their builders, not blockers, and they better join the TCCI rather than TASCOS if they want to get noticed. A number of community organisations remain dismayed by the processes by which grants are provided. They remain dismayed that despite commitments made in the 2024 election to providing longer-term funding arrangements to community organisations, they have not all yet seen nor heard much about any such changes. Community sector organisations feel unseen and unheard by this government, Mr President. I've met with and heard from a number of community organisations in recent months, all who are trying to sing for their supper through community budget submissions. All who are seeking to impress upon me the need for funding to deliver their services and the impacts on everyday Tasmanians if the funding isn't forthcoming. All conveying their struggles with maintaining staff who don't know if they'll have jobs beyond 30 June until the budget is announced. Surely there's a better way of supporting our community sector to deliver services that save the government money and make Tasmania a better place for everyone. Whilst I won't name all of the organisations I've met with and heard from, I will share some words from Cancer Council CEO Ms Alison Lai, who sums up the sentiments of many community organisations better than I have tried to, in conveying the challenges and feelings of her organisation. Ms Lai says, Cancer Council Tasmania is very proud to have been delivering cancer supportive care, prevention, research and advocacy in our state for 30 years. Over this time, the number of cancer diagnoses has almost doubled, and our work in the community continues to be essential to ensuring Tasmanians have the information they need to reduce their risk of a cancer diagnosis and access to the essential supports that will reduce the impact of their cancer diagnosis and contribute to the success of their treatment. Every year we provide support to thousands of Tasmanians impacted by cancer, providing emotional support, financial assistance, information and resources, alongside access to a range of programs and services specifically designed to support individuals through a cancer diagnosis, including their family and loved ones. All of our services are provided free of charge. We are also proud of the financial investment we provide into cancer research in the state, which has just tipped over $7 million since we were established, which includes a long-standing financial contribution towards the clinical trials that the Tasmanian Government delivers in our public hospitals. We currently receive a small contribution from the Tasmanian Government, representing approximately 13 cents in the dollar for what it costs to deliver our cancer prevention and supportive care programs and services. While a small contribution, we rely heavily on this funding to underpin our work. Cancer Council Tasmania was originally established in partnership between the Tasmanian Government and the Tasmanian community, with an understanding that the work of our organisation would be sustainable through community fundraising efforts. We value this long-standing relationship with the Tasmanian Government, and we can say hand on heart that the Tasmanian community has gone above and beyond to exceed this commitment made 30 years ago, contributing almost 90% of the funds that are required to deliver the services they need. But with the rising cost of doing business and the cost of living impacting charitable giving across the nation, we have been actively lobbying the Tasmanian Government to increase its contribution to 25 cents in the dollar, which would make considerable difference to the sustainability of our services and ensuring we meet the growing demand for our support in response to the sobering reality that the number of Tasmanians being diagnosed with cancer continues to increase. We are, of course, worried about how we will be able to respond to this increased need in the community without this certainty of funding support from the Tasmanian Government. We know that we are not the only community service organisation that is having a discussion with the Tasmanian Government about their funding, and we're not alone in being worried about government cutting back on their investment in community sector programs and services. We know that the government values the work our charitable organisation does, and we have no doubt they value the work of every community organisation working hard to make a difference for all Tasmanians. But it did sadden us that the contribution of our community sector did not get a mention in the Premier's State of the State address this year. We did read it with interest, and we did note the absence of any reference to our sector. The Tasmanian community sector is an industry that is one of the largest and growing employers in our state. We're an industry that not only employs thousands of Tasmanians and engages thousands of volunteers, but we are also an industry that is the heartbeat of our community's well-being. We are an industry whose core focus is ensuring everybody is able to work, play and thrive regardless of who they are and where they live. Tasmania has so much to be proud of, and we share the Premier's praise for the incredible work happening in industries like construction, manufacturing, tourism, hospitality and more. With vocal support for industries like these, it was of course our hope that our industry, the community services sector, might also get a mention, because it is our industry that perseveres and never stops working hard to ensure all Tasmanians are supported in good times and bad. So yes, we were saddened to see the omission of the community services sector, and hope that this was an unfortunate oversight and not a sign that we should be worried this omission might also be reflected in the state budget next month. I know there are many community organisations, like our own, whose services will be dependent on the outcome of the upcoming budget. I know that there'll be many organisations holding their breath until the budget is tabled. I wholeheartedly hope that the contribution that Cancer Council Tasmania makes to the community is reflected in the state budget when it is handed down, and I hope the same for all of my community sector colleagues." End quote. Mr President, I thank Ms Lai for allowing me to share her thoughts, and I can confirm from conversations that I've had with a number of organisations, community workers and volunteers, these are the sentiments shared by many across the community services sector. Mr President, I want the community sector to know that I see them, I hear them and value their contribution. I want all of the generous people out there who volunteer their time to help others to know that they are valued. I'm fairly sure, Mr President, that the Premier didn't intentionally exclude or intend to upset the community sector and volunteers in his State of the State address. At least I hope he didn't. And I do hope that in tomorrow's budget announcement he will make this right by ensuring the community sector and volunteers are duly acknowledged in the budget speech, and by providing appropriate funding and longer-term arrangements for the important services that community organisations and volunteers so generously provide. I note the State of the State Address 2025.